Well, good evening all. Before I open the meeting, please could I ask any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback, please. And any remote participants, could you please keep your camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak, and ideally do not use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. Please note the meeting will be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The record of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swelborough Council or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using a link on the website or a mobile phone and tablet device, it is not possible to identify you, and you will not be recorded as being in remote attendance. Members could ask you to speak loudly and clearly into your microphones and to switch your microphone off after speaking, otherwise remote participants may be unable to hear the next speaker. Welcome everyone to this extraordinary Policy and Resources Committee meeting, including visiting members attending and those attending remotely, and members of the public, of course. I'd now like to welcome our staff, of which there are an absolute plethora, so I don't intend to go through them all in name this evening, and we've also got two members of staff joining us online. There is no fire drill planned, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside where directed. And please remember, do not, on any circumstances, use a lift. Is there anyone in attendance that requires assistance this evening? Okay, thank you. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Jays.
Oh, sorry, no, not this one. Not this week. Next week.
Okay. That, advance notice. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so members, we move on to item 4 on the agenda then, which is the local plan review, Reg 18 consultation launch, and I thank our officer to introduce it for us. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this report sets out the background to the recommendations made by the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group during its meeting on the 4th of November 2025 with regard to the Local Plan Regulation 18 document, which is set out in your papers tonight in Appendix 1, and the Draft Sustainability Appraisal Scoping Report Update set out in Appendix 3. The purpose of the PTPWG report was to present the Draft Reg 18 Local Plan and the refreshed Sustainability Appraisal Scoping Report. The officer recommendation was to recommend both documents to Policy and Resources Committee for approval for consultation purposes. Members discussed this report at PTPWG and voted unanimously in favour of recommending to yourselves at Policy and Resources Committee that the consultation be launched, with delegation to the Head of Service in consultation with the PTPWG Chair to make any minor amendments and corrections to the document prior to the start of the consultation period. So this is a formal Reg 18 consultation that seeks feedback from stakeholders and the community to a series of questions about the local plan's vision, objectives and development management policies. So a Regulation 18 local plan is a chance to get early feedback from stakeholders and the community, and for them to provide us with information and knowledge that can then be fed into the next stage of the local plan. Excuse me. So why is Swale consulting on a Reg 18 local plan now? Fundamentally, because PTPWG recommended it back in the 15th of July. They did so because since the last local plan Reg 19 consultation in spring of 2021 and the local plan Reg 18 consultation of autumn 2021, the National Planning Policy Framework was updated late last year, along with updates to the associated planning practice guidance that sit below the National Planning Policy Framework. Also, a number of new evidence-based documents have been undertaken by ourselves and others have been updated. And the Swale Climate and Ecological Emergency Action Plans have been updated. A new Swale affordable housing emergency was declared this April, and the Town and Country Planning Association Healthy Homes Pledge was signed by the Council. And the new Swale corporate plan has been adopted. All of these need to be reflected in the emerging local plan. Again, it also provides an early opportunity for the public and stakeholders to engage with key elements of the local plan. So just moving on to the structure of the Reg 18 local plan that you have before you and policy drafting. So there is some flexibility as to what style a local plan Reg 18 can take. And at PTPWG on the 15th of July this year, members recommended that the scope of the Reg 18 consultation would include matters that would not depend on the Highstead Planning Inquiry decision. So the vision, the objectives, the portrait of the borough and the development management policies. So, in addition to an introductory section, the opening part of the document is made up of 4 main sections that each contain consultation questions. The 4 main sections are the introduction, which explains what a local plan is and what it can contain, the history of Swale's local plan, why we're consulting on a Reg 18 at this stage, how to comment on the consultation, obviously a key part, and what happens next. It then moves on to what has influenced the development of this local plan, which obviously includes national guidance, community and stakeholder involvement to date, other relevant plans and strategies, and any other environmental impacts. It then looks at the characteristics of Swale and the key issues and challenges that need to be addressed by the local plan. These then lead up to the vision and objectives, and then it moves on to the development management policies. These have been grouped thematically into general development criteria, good design, housing, economic development, infrastructure, climate change, biodiversity and landscape, and the historic environment. There is then a section on implementation and monitoring. This will be much more detailed at the next stage of the local plan, which is called Reg 19, and then it has appendices, which includes the glossary and list of acronyms used through the document, because we're well aware a local plan is full of acronyms and technical terms, so those are all in there to help everyone understand, hopefully, what those terms are. So just to remind everyone, the vision and objectives are those which were recommended by PTPWG back in August 2024 and agreed by this committee the following month. There are questions in the consultation document before you asking if this vision is positive, clear, realistic and ambitious, and if the objectives align with the issues and challenges facing Swale, which are set out in the previous section. You may have noticed that there are no strategic policies within this draft Reg 18 that would normally sit above the DM policies. These would typically provide the high-level long-term planning principles to guide development. These will be included within the Reg 19 stage, which is the next stage of the local plan. But as I said previously, it was decided by members not to include them within this Reg 19 plan. So for drafting the development management policies, officers used the extensive informal engagement work that was undertaken with members of PTPWG during the summer of 2024. Policies have been updated to reflect the revised National Planning Policy Framework and other updated relevant guidance and any new evidence-based documents that have been produced. They have been drafted with input from officers from across the council and our development management colleagues, who are obviously the people that have to interpret them and use them daily. So we've had some excellent feedback from them. There are 5 new policies within this There are 5 policies within this local plan that members won't have seen in full before, and these are all in the climate change chapter. They have built on previous local plan policies on climate change, which need to be substantially updated and strengthened to reflect the ambitions and actions of the Council's climate and ecological emergency, the corporate plan, the Climate Change Act and the National Planning Policy Framework. So Table 1 in Appendix 2 of the papers lists all of the policies within the Reg 18 local plan with a commentary column explaining why each of the policies has been updated since members saw them last summer, and it briefly highlights the nature of any change made. This report also sets out a list of the comments made and changes proposed at PTPWG a couple of weeks ago. They're in Appendix 4, and alongside that is the officer's response. So those changes have been made to the Reg 18 local plan that you've got before you in Appendix 1. So just moving on to the Sustainability Appraisal Scoping Report. The sustainability appraisal process considers how a local plan will influence the environmental, social and economic characteristics of an area. It plays an important role in demonstrating that the plan is positively prepared and contributes towards sustainable development. The scoping report is the first stage of this sustainability appraisal process. It sets the context and approach for the sustainability appraisal moving forward. A scoping report was undertaken for this local plan review in 2018, but due to it now being 7 years old, it's been refreshed and it is included in Appendix 3. The consultation process for the scoping report is a technical consultation, and the process for it is set out in national policy. It has to only be sent specifically to Historic England, Natural England and the Environment Agency, and they have 5 weeks to respond. However, we will obviously accept comments from any member of the public or stakeholder that submits comments on the Sustainability Appraisal Scoping Report. So just moving back to the local plan, the timescale and consultation process for this Regulation 18. So the draft local plan timetable was set out in Appendix 4 of the PTP-WG report from the 4th of November. It shows the challenging timeline between the Reg 18, the Reg 19 and submission stages of the local plan, which is required to meet the previously agreed ambition to submit the local plan before changes to plan making are introduced from January 2027. So it's for this reason the Reg 18 consultation is proposed to last for 6 weeks. This is considered appropriate in this case due to the decision to meet the submission date. Consultation dates have been highlighted to consultees ahead of time, and the reduced scope of this Reg 18 exercise compared with past consultations. There are no allocations, and that is the thing that the public tend to be most interested in. So the consultation period will run from the 12th of Jan to the 23rd of Feb. Officers are working with our communications team on a range of engagement opportunities to enable as wide as participation as possible. We'll do press releases, a second presentation to the local parish council's liaison forum, articles in Inside Swale, the business newsletter, the Swale Green Grid newsletter, social media videos, and frequently asked questions. So as I said, there's consultation questions scattered throughout the document. They'll all be able to be responded to online via the consultation portal, but as always, general comments can also be responded to. We'll notify everyone on the consultation database ahead of the consultation to provide them with the dates and the links, and so that people will be ready for it. All libraries in the borough and council offices will have hard copies, as well as the Swallows Leisure Centre for the time that the Sittingbourne Library is closed for refurbishment. Parish and town councils were made aware of the consultation period at the local parish council's liaison forum on the 24th of September. So hopefully have had time to plan ahead with meetings if they would like to discuss it. After the consultation period closes, responses will be summarised by the team. The main issues will be reported to a future meeting of the PTP-WG with recommendations on how any of those issues can be addressed by the next stage of the local plan. Lastly, typos. Given the sheer breadth and complexity of this document and the timescale for drafting it in, it is inevitable there will be some minor corrections needed before the consultation starts in January. And therefore, recommendation 2 of this report was deemed a pragmatic suggestion. You know, someone might spot a word that should be in the glossary or grammatical errors that need correcting. So we have been working on those since the papers were published for PTP-WG. The team are keeping a table that lists all of those changes, so we've got, a good record of those. And just to add, there are some places in the plan that says link to be inserted. That will be done just before the consultation goes live. We just can't do it ahead of time, partly because the website's having a bit of work done to it, but those will be done just before the first week back from Christmas. So just finally, you'll be pleased to hear, the recommendations tonight are 1, to recommend the local plan Reg 18 document in Appendix 1 and the draft Sustainability Appraisal Scoping Report update in Appendix 3 to full council for approval for consultation purposes, and 2, to recommend that full council delegate to the Head of Planning in consultation with the Planning and Transportation Policy Working Group Chair the making of minor amendments and corrections to the local plan Reg 18 document prior to the start of the consultation period. And just to note, the recommendations from PTPWG on the 4th of November will be coming to the next P&R agenda, not tonight. They can't be brought to you tonight to note because this is an extraordinary P&R and that can't note items. So just in case anyone was wondering, that was why. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Natalie. And just before I open it out to questions, members, I just want to put on record my gratitude for the amount of work that the team have done in pulling all this together. We don't take any of it for granted or lightly either. So thank you, each and every one of you, for the part that you've played in bringing this together for us this evening. Was that Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Chair. I did support a colleague at the PTPWG on the new policies that have been put into the Reg 18 consultation launch. Both Natalie and Anna said that the Reg 18 is all a consultation draft, and they're not. It doesn't say full council have adopted these already. So basically, that's what you're doing, and I accept that at some point these 5 new policies will come back to us for proper discussion. There are some things. I'm not saying I don't support it, but some. In brand new builds, even some of the things are not suitable. So it's got to be horses for courses. I'll be as vague as that. How's that? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Sorry. And I would like to say thank you to past and present staff for all the work they've done on this. It probably seems like a never-ending treadmill, but I'm sure that it will end at some point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Natalie, did you want to respond?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for your thanks. Yes, no comment on the last bit probably. But yes, just in terms of the policies, they're all draft policies. It's a draft plan. This is the first stage of the local plan process. You know, it's to get it out there, get comments and feedback from stakeholders, the public, and then we bring those comments back. We will bring it again at the Reg 19 stage. Yes, we will relook at it then and decide moving forward if we want to make tweaks or larger changes to bits that are in this plan, and then the new bits we will add at the Reg 19 stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've had some thoughts out of the blue, by which I'm assuming the parish of Rodmersham. We would like to suggest there is some policy wording about the preservation of our chalk streams to tie in with the works that the South East Rivers Trust have been undertaking. There is mention of the chalk streams in the Reg 18, but there isn't a specific policy that would seek to protect them or that we can be incorporated in future developments. That's one. We don't seem to have a policy about the groundwater protection zones, which for some reason are called SPZs, including avoiding schemes that risk our water supply, including construction involving boreholes. The policy wording about SANGs, now the policy is to be put forward in the Reg 19, but if we want to put a strong policy forward, we need to be able to test it before the Reg 19 to see if there's going to be kickback, because it might be late if it's in the Reg 19. And finally, can we not have a policy that solar farms should not be built on BMV land? I know that is not what's happening nationally, but if we have a policy on it, it can at least be tested. I think most of us are agreed that BMV land shouldn't really be used for solar farms or building houses on. So there's a couple of suggestions there. And in response to the comments that were made at the PTPWG, by insisting on using the phrase settlement hierarchy with regards to rural exception sites, I really have a problem with this, because it goes against the whole point of exception sites. They are exceptions. If we want parishes to come forward with ideas for rural exception sites. We don't want them being, oh, well, that's not in a sustainable an area or as high up our strategic settlement hierarchy. So we're going to favour, for example, another 40 houses in Newington because that's higher up the settlement strategy than Milstead, where they're coming forward with a proposal for 12 houses. If these remote areas come forward with proposals, remembering that rural exception sites are generally low-cost housing to enable the villages to stay relevant to their young people, having that phrase in their settlement hierarchy, it just complicates, and I just think it sends out the wrong message. So I'm again going to really ask that we just remove that phrase settlement hierarchy so that we can not that there's hundreds of them coming forward, but if there is some of these coming forward, then there's no extra hurdles put in the way of them, because I really think we should be supporting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalie, did you want to come back? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just on the SANGS point, obviously, as you said, Councillor Bullock, we did discuss this at PTPWG. I think we felt the reason we suggested it coming forward at the Regulation 19 stage is because it would be a strategic policy. Obviously, giving it that strategic policy level gives it a bit more oomph. And because we haven't got strategic policies within this local Reg 18 local plan, we can't bring it forward at this stage of the plan making process. So that's why we suggested bringing it forward at the Reg 19 local plan stage. I think just on that one. I think in terms of no solar farms on BNG, I don't think we have the evidence currently that we could support that policy. And as everyone knows, everything in a local plan has to be evidence-led. And that's obviously not stopping our development management colleagues or yourselves on planning committee, if something comes in, arguing it on landscape terms or BMV terms, but we do not have the evidence currently for a policy on that. If I just quickly turn around in terms of, the groundwater protections policy.
Shall I speak?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'll just pass over to my colleague. We don't have microphones at the back.
Thank you. So with reference to chalk streams and source protection zones, yeah, I mean, they are source protection zones are referenced in the policy themselves, but I don't think you're right, chalk streams aren't themselves referenced, although they are in the preamble. And if you'd like to suggest some particular wording, I'd be very happy to consider that, because obviously the policy direction is supporting what you're saying. And also through the regulation consultation, if people want to submit specific policy suggestions and policy wording, then we can look at that. I hope that's...
So could I propose an amendment where we include, what are they called again? Chalk streams in the policy along with the other phrase that you used?
I mean, I don't have a problem with including the reference to chalk streams in the policy themselves. Yeah.
So I'm happy to propose that. If I've got
Okay, could I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Jones, thank you. Those in favour? Sorry.
Which numbered policy are we adding the word chalk streams to it, and where in the sentence?
Can we take a 20-minute break whilst I find it?
It's C10, yeah. I haven't got the wording in front of me, but it was it'd be somewhere probably at the early part of the policy. Do you want me to have a look?
So policy C10.
I've noticed a typo in that policy anyway, so
And 1E, ensure chalk streams are not subject to inappropriate development. Does that work?
I've got my...
Leader, we're at risk of making policy on the hoof, which I know is something that all the members get very cross with us about. If it is the will of councillors that something about chalk streams goes in, then I'm sure Anna can put the appropriate wording in, bearing in mind this is going out to consultation, so nothing is set in stone, and she can even, if it's the will of members, work with Councillor Baldock on the agreed wording. But I just think to try and put her under pressure to come up with wording now is probably not as fair as it could be.
Yeah, if people are agreeable with that, I can discuss that with Anna and we can just amend it appropriately.
Okay, thank you. So members, those in favour of that proposal? Thank you. That's unanimous, members. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. Natalie, did you want to come back on the rural settlements strategy, please? Thank you. Thank you, Stuart.
We still feel it's appropriate to keep that wording in there. It's to ensure that development is still sustainable. So it's focused on the scale of what the rural exception site will be, so that it's located close to appropriate level of services. So we feel that gives a steer to the approach there. And when we actually look at our settlement hierarchy, we do have a lot of settlements at the lower level. So really anything that's not in the hierarchy is considered open countryside, so really wouldn't meet the definition of a settlement of any form. So it's just making sure that the scale of what's being proposed is appropriate to the level of services by the settlement as it's situated in our hierarchy.
So, and where would, for example, Milstead come in our current settlement strategy? Hierarchy. And for that reason, where would Baddlesmere or Staple Street, which are two areas that we have actually successfully had rural exception sites? See, on those grounds, whilst we're looking, if this was policy, we may actually have discouraged two of the few rural exception sites that we've had coming forward, and I just think that would be totally counterproductive.
Sorry, could I have those settlement names again, please? If that's
Milstead.
Milstead. Yeah, according to this, it's not listed in the...
Exactly, it's not in the settlement hierarchy. And these are exactly the sort of places you would want 6 or 7 local parish housing needs to be met, because it helps keep these villages sustainable. And, Ocado does deliver out there when the roads are not closed. So, it is in the settlement hierarchy. Number 5. Right. But so I would just like to propose that we remove the phrase settlement hierarchy, because I don't think it adds anything, and I think it would be potentially counterproductive. So if I've got a seconder, I'll be happy. If I don't, I'll die. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So I've got a proposer and seconder. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think our issue is that it's not the settlements down the settlement hierarchy is they're at the bottom because they aren't sustainable settlements. So the reason it is within that is because you would then be allowing development in unsustainable locations, and as everyone knows, one of the main principles of the planning system is sustainable development. Obviously, people can still put in planning applications and they can be looked at planning committee. But the main principle of the local plan and national planning guidance is sustainable development. So putting sites, development sites, especially housing, in those tiers of the bottom of the settlement hierarchy, they are not considered sustainable. And that is the issue with them. And they're not particularly always going to be low cost. If we get a registered housing provider, or you get the rural exception site through that come forward with an affordable housing provider, there's potentially wiggle room there to look at it with them. But it is that, sustainable development is the key to the planning system.
And that's why it's an exception. Rural exception sites have to have the support, the demonstrated support of local people and the parish council. So these aren't things that are going to be imposed on these settlements or these communities. They are something that the communities themselves are asking for. They are exactly the places we want something.
Okay, so we've still got a proposal on the floor from Councillor Baldock, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Yeah, but he's way down the list. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody who wants to speak on that proposal before we... Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, I'm looking at page 51 of the whole pack, page 38 of the document, and it does say about rural exception sites, and I think Councillor Baldock's right. It encourages local planning authorities to be responsive to local needs and to plan housing development to reflect the local needs, particularly for affordable housing, including rural exception sites where appropriate. The NPPF describes rural exception sites as being small sites used for affordable housing in perpetuity where sites would not normally be used, or would not normally be used for housing. And I take that to mean places like Milstead and other small villages who might see that there's a benefit for their local children to have affordable housing locally in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
I can see where Councillor Baldock's coming from on this, and Councillor Palmer, but this is surely the sort of thing which is why you have a consultation with a document, not just raising it at meetings now to be changing parts of that document. Let it go out to consultation, then raise these things and have a bit more detail of what we're trying to get at, so then officers can make the comments for it. When it then does come back, we can have that conversation whether we need to be changing that part of the document. But at the moment, I don't think it needs to be changed. Just get it out to consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to take a little step back. If you read the sentence from having regard to potential, yes, it makes absolutely no sense having strategic development strategy and the policy on the settlement hierarchy in there. But if you read it as it is intended in its full sentence format, you have to provide a thorough assessment of the potential, suitable, available and achievable sites having regard to. So that would take, for example, as you mentioned, the rural exception site at Battlesmere. That was for Battlesmere, Leveland, Sheldwich and Throwley. The basis was, in theory, the location at Sheldwich would be more sustainable. It's closer to the other facilities. However, it was a case of almost doing like we do with the water, with the flooding and the sequential testing. You're going through the sites that are available within the area and going, well, yeah, but we can't do that one because... And then you go down to the next one within that rural area that wants the exception site. It just ensures that they've done it in the right sort of order, as opposed to picking a site that just so happens to be offered to them. It is a process, and I do have sympathy because it does, when you first look at it, go, really? It's an exception site. You shouldn't be looking at the hierarchy for the exception site, but you do need to do it if you're having those combined ones between parishes, and you've got one of those parishes that may have additional facilities versus others, but not necessarily have the suitable land. So I think it can stay for now and go to consultation.
Okay, members, I don't see anybody else indicating on this, so those in favour of the proposal to remove the settlement hierarchy? Those against? And abstentions? Carried. So that falls, members. Thank you. Right, we're returning back to the substantive item, and it's Councillor Gibson on next.
Thank you, Chair. Only very briefly from me to echo your thanks to the officers who've done a tremendous amount of work over many, many years, particularly recently with an exceptionally high workload in a whole range of other contexts as well as this. So a real tribute to them. And a personal thanks from me to Councillor Braun, who did a sterling job chairing PTPWG in my absence and got us to a really thorough stage with the really helpful Appendix 4, which I think sets out really clearly all the good work that has been done and will continue to be done to make sure this is the best possible document for going to consultation. So happy to support when we get to that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
No, that moment has gone.
Okay.
I've basically Larissa said what I was going to say. So.
Okay. Councillor Martin, please.
Just a bit more of a general context from me on this. I think PTPWG did do this to death to a great extent, but we have had more news planning-wise in the past few days. And given, let's face it, the Secretary of State is now indicating that they're going to require us to give items back to them if it's over 150 homes and we're likely to refuse. I think it goes to show and highlight just how important it is that we get an up-to-date local plan through as quickly as possible that has sensible policies in it, so that we are in a position to have some say, any element of say over where housing goes and what the standards are in our area. So for that reason, I think we have got a really good Reg 18 document that's been prepared over many, many, many moons by many, many wonderful officers that have spent too many hours probably doing the same stuff again and again and again. It's time to get this to Reg 18. Let's find out what the public think. Let's find out what our stakeholders think. And then we'll go again. More review, and we'll get it going, get it moving.
Thank you, members. I don't see anybody... Councillor Wise.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Fully in support of that. Just a quick question about the policy B1. On page 152 in our papers, there's reference at 38.0.35 to the Kent and Medway LNRS, which was published in November 2025. Can I just check that's been sent to the Secretary of State, but it's not publicly available anywhere yet? So presumably, I think they're actually launching this in December, which is why there's a holding page currently. But hopefully will be quite a pertinent document for anyone that wants to feed back on this. So just checking that we can make sure that they have definitely gone ahead and published that publicly before that goes out, so that we can link in like we've done with the other documents there, because I'm certainly waiting to see that, because I'd quite like to look through it. But yeah, just that was the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we are waiting too. It's been delayed, brought forward. Yes, so one of our officers is on working groups for that. So yes, until, and we sort of have to bring the drawbridge down before we go on our Christmas break so it can go to print. But yeah, we will get in there the latest LNRS wording at that stage. And I think there's a meeting next week for officers on it. So yeah, we will get the latest version. But yeah, touch wood, it will be ready to go.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you. Very straightforward question, because I think we need to crack on with this, and I agree, but one probably for Larissa. On the dates that's been promoted here, what effect were some of these could clash with LGR, and what position would this council be in at that point, in the theory of we could be at a point of a shadow council, etc.? What implications could that have on this, please?
So all the time this council is in existence, so until vesting day, the local plan is our local plan. The government have been quite clear that they don't want any local plans to stop as a result of LGR or even to slow. If we have a shadow authority, the shadow authority will be the authority for the new unitary, and so will not have any, it might have the same councillors as ours, because people may stand to stand on the new authority, but they will not have any say over any decision that this council makes. It's a sovereign council. So therefore, providing our local plan is adopted and goes through the Secretary of, the inspection and everything else before vesting day, that is the local plan that goes to the new council and remains the local plan for this area until and unless the new council develops their own local plan.
Thank you very much. I did actually know that, but for the record, I thank you for that, because I just wanted in a public meeting. I thought that'd be useful to share. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Speed, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I'd like to echo comments made by other councillors on the amount of work that's gone into this document, and to record my thanks. It's a very good document indeed. One of the issues that arose from the Highstead inquiry was that deliverability and viability are not issues that need to be taken into account when permission is granted. So it's basically if a scheme is unviable and therefore undeliverable, that's actually not a barrier to giving it approval, which seems to me ridiculous, because apart from the fact it wastes everybody's time, it also, if a development goes into a plan and then is not delivered, it throws out the allocations in the rest of the plan. So I wondered if in policy G1 on page 40, which is the general development criteria, we could consider having something to the effect that development proposals must demonstrate that they are viable and deliverable. Turning to policy H1 on page 47, I note that we're now saying that on greenfield land, 30% of dwellings should be affordable housing. Obviously, at the moment in our current plan, sites outside settlement boundaries should have 40%. So I just wondered why it changed to 30%. The officer mentioned that it's been updated to reflect the new NPPF. I just wondered if there's anything in here that's not consistent with the latest version of the framework. Looking at the timetable, I mean, that's predicated on there being a decision on Highstead by June, so that can be taken into account when the Reg 19 is published. Just to make the point that I think it's almost certain that there will be no final decision on Highstead by June, because even if the Secretary of State has pronounced a judgment, if the decision is to refuse it, then the applicant will certainly appeal, and if the decision is to approve it, then this council might decide to JR it, or indeed another party might decide to JR it. So we will still be going into the Reg 19 phase without knowing the outcome of Highstead Park. And then my final point, just to go back to something Councillor Baldock raised earlier, I would certainly like to see a policy that we don't build solar farms on BMV, and if the answer to that is that we don't have the evidence base to make that a policy, could I ask that work is done so that we do have the evidence base on which to create a policy on that basis? Thank you.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Natalie, did you want to come back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the deliverability and viability, a local plan has to be deliverable and viable. You know, it's changed in the old days. You could put sort of, not really, but any old thing in a local plan, and it didn't particularly matter if it was viable or deliverable. Nowadays, everything in your local plan has to be deliverable and viable. You know, as you know, we've got the viability assessment of the whole plan, and that is a sort of a newish element. So that is something that anything within the local plan has to be proved that it is viable and developable. So that is why there is a lot of work in the background that goes on. So I'm not sure of the added value of adding it to policy G1. And I'm not sure how consistent it would be with national policy. So I don't know whether, unless Stuart's got a different view, we would need to take that away and discuss it with our development management colleagues.
Could I just come back on that, Chairman? I accept that as far as the local plan is concerned. I'm specifically thinking of developers having to demonstrate that their applications are viable and therefore deliverable. So where it says all development proposals will, as appropriate, so it's an obligation on the developers to demonstrate that their plans are viable, because, you know, we have a situation with Highstead where the proposal is quite plainly not viable and it is not deliverable, and yet potentially it's going to be approved, and then we'll have an approved development that then doesn't get delivered, which will throw the local plan into total disarray. So I'm just trying to find a way of putting an obligation on developers to demonstrate viability, and that being a requirement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would only throw the local plan in disarray if members choose to allocate the Highstead Park proposals when you go through and choose allocations. In terms of viability at planning application stage, you know, those of you on planning committee will be well aware, you obviously all often on larger schemes get viability assessments, and you have to make judgments between whether you accept, you know, the full affordable housing, the full open space, and making those sort of balanced judgments. So that is something that is done at that stage. As I said, I think we would need to take that away, unless Joanne's got a view. I think we do need to take that away because it would be quite a significant new thing to add to that policy. As I said, and it's not something I have seen elsewhere. We couldn't stop a developer putting in an application because it isn't deliverable and viable. They always have, often, as I said, put in a viability assessment. So that is something we will take away and discuss with our development manager. Then we can report that back in the full council report. Just on your other points, no, I don't think there is anything in here that isn't consistent with the MPPF. And then if I just pass over to my colleague Stuart on the affordable housing policy, you're asking about why has it changed from 30% to 30%. Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Natalie. So we've just published a whole plan viability assessment that determines the reasonable viability of types of site that we could be considering through the plan drafting. As part of that, it tested a series of policy aspirations for the plan, so looked at not just affordable housing but other development costs as well. So just as a bit of a sort of reflection, the current affordable housing policy in Bearing Fruits has a range of different affordable housing requirements. So for the Isle of Sheppey, it has 0 affordable housing sought on it. Sittingbourne Town, urban extensions and Iwade only 10% affordable housing. And then you get the higher quantums at Faversham Town and their urban extensions, and other rural areas, so anything outside the settlement areas or allocated urban extensions to Sittingbourne would be the 40%. So the whole plan viability assessment tested the viability of types of development in the 3 principal settlement areas of the borough. So it looked at Faversham, it looked at Sittingbourne, it looked at the Isle of Sheppey. And it concluded that based on the policy requirements we're seeking through the local plan, that 30% affordable housing could be achieved across the whole of the borough on greenfield sites. And to meet the policy aspirations of the plan, we would have to drop the affordable housing requirement to 10% on brownfield sites. So hopefully that answers your question. So whereas it may be slightly less in the rural areas, you would actually get more affordable housing, for example, on the Isle of Sheppey, and certainly sites around the edge of Sydenham town that wouldn't be part of an urban extension, for example. In terms of the 30% target, that is determined by the Strategic Housing Market Assessment that we've got published on our website from 2020. And that sets various types of housing need that we have within the borough, of which it determines that there is a need of 27.7% of all new dwellings should be for affordable. So that's roughly where that 30% comes from. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester, please.
Yes, I was putting forward a proposal that work is done to produce an evidence base that we would not build solar farms on B&V land.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Baldock. Yeah, of course you can.
I think we would have to look into the feasibility of that and maybe have a bit more parameters around what, because obviously it would have to look at it objectively, and we would need to see what we could do, you know, if there was a potential piece of evidence around that, look at what other people have done and take guidance. But yeah, we can do a sort of feasibility and investigate it, but I wouldn't want to commit us to doing it in case it's just not something that can be done. But yeah, we could look into it for you.
Okay, Councillor Speed, are you happy with that?
Well, that would need to be reported back then to this committee.
Councillor Boyne.
Thank you. So on that, so I think we can, from listening there to the response, I think we could, if we're minded, agree the proposal, subject to the work being done, and then that information then comes back for us to actually to make a decision whether that should then be included. But at the moment, we seem to be proposal and pushing it here, there, and everywhere. I think we can agree the proposal. Work can be done, and then bring the evidence of the ability to actually meet that requirement back to PTPWG or this group or wherever it needs to go for us to actually make a decision on. I would suggest.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as Natalie said, we can't do a piece of work to find evidence to support one or the other. We can look to see what evidence is out there. I think to come back to this committee would probably not be the best place in the first instance. I think it should go back to PTPWG, who have the members on there who have been working on this all along, and then PTPWG will either decide actually there isn't anything, or there is something and it has a financial implication, and therefore, but I think trying to keep to the process that we've used to date would be better than skipping PTP and just coming back here, because that I don't think that would help the process and ultimately the outcome. And we're not saying there isn't any evidence to say you shouldn't build solar farms there. What we're saying is we'll do a piece of work to see what the evidence is, but in an objective way.
Thank you. And also, it wouldn't be ready in time to input into the Regulation 18. It would be for the Reg 19 stage of the local plan, because we wouldn't be able to do a feasibility study of what's out there and then do the study. Just to sort of note that.
Thank you. Councillor Speed?
Yes, I'm happy that it would go back to PTPWG. I accept it wouldn't be done in time for Reg 18, but in theory it could be included in Reg 19, and I accept it needs to be an objective assessment, but I think that the work needs to be done, and we need to see what the evidence is. We do.
Right, Councillor Palmer, please.
My points have been really covered. I was worried it might delay the Reg 18, but I think Natalie and Councillor Speed explained it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. Just to get an idea of the process, I think from memory what happened before, and just maybe officers say if I'm right or wrong, but obviously when the consultation happens, there'll be things coming back and there could be some sort of big changes to the document. was it right in the past that if there are changes and something like that we just discussed goes into it, then that just goes out for consultation just on these bits as we move along, isn't it? So things don't get delayed. It just keeps moving forward with those running alongside it. Is that the case?
So the Reg 18 goes out, all the comments come back, we report the comments back to you, you decide, committees decide, members, what changes you accept, don't accept. And then if we've been doing new bits of evidence alongside that as well, take those on board. We then have the final Reg 19, which is the next stage. All of that goes out for consultation again. And then we go through the process again for the submission plan. So, yeah.
Yep. Can, Chair. So that's what I was all getting at. Any changes like that we do come up, it still goes out for another consultation at the time of the Reg 19. So there is opportunity to add those sorts of things in rather than this stage. So it's good to be able to just recognise that can happen.
Yeah, thank you. Good point and well made. Councillor Worcester, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 points. One is around a little bit of the language used. So I'm aware that this might be something that does come forward for the consultation. But, for example, policy H5, when you're talking about park homes, there is a couple of different phrases used which might actually confuse people. So, for example, on the first page where it looks at the introduction to the policy, the phrase over 55s is used, and then in the actual policy the phrase older generation or older population is used. I'm thoroughly happily to accept, for instance, if we need to do that in terms of how it's designated in legislation or other documents, but from the public's point of view who we want responses back, that sort of element might be a little bit of aiding confusion, maybe. And very similar for policy B7, just another example of, for example, people will be reading that and one of the phrases that's used in 44.0.9 is open to the public. We know that historically disability access has been an issue on a number of areas around our coastal concerns. Not through this council's fault or what have you, but if people might say, well, open to the public, some of the areas are not actually open to the public, they're open to some of the public. So it might be worth just clarifying. And to Councillor Wise's comment regarding extra documents that are coming forward for biodiversity from other agencies, I just think I'll be looking through those policies and seeing if we can have a look at language there to make it as accessible as possible. That, for instance, if future documents do come forward that are useful to our local plan, we're using the right language to allow people the most opportunity to incorporate information used by other agencies in future decisions. And my last point is around the actual accessibility of the consultation going out. Can I just be reassured that when the consultation does go out, when members of the public do log on, for instance, on an electronic copy potentially, that they will be able to access and fill in any of the questions and then leave any of the questions and still be able to, only because we've had a couple of consultations recently where consultations have gone out and then we've had to go back and say, actually, all consultations need to be online equal with each other. So the paper reg consultations for members of the public, if they have a paper consultation, they'll be able to fill in any question. It should be the same online. It shouldn't be that you get to question 2, you don't want to answer question 2, therefore you can't complete the rest of the consultation document. I just want to make sure that's the case on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Worcester. Thank you for those ones where you pointed out the different language. That's really helpful. We'll have a look tomorrow and correct those. Just on the accessibility check, our colleagues in the comms team run it through an accessibility checker and do all of that. We try and make sure we do use plain English. Obviously, that's slightly tricky with all of the planning terms. We understand that. But that's why we try and use the glossary and the acronyms to try and explain it all. But yeah, we do all of that. And we use some software called Objective, and that has, they're signed up to all of the accessibility sort of procedures. All representations that we get in are treated equal. You don't have to fill out every question. I mean, there's hundreds in there, but it's to give people the chance. But if you only want to talk about the vision, that's absolutely fine. If you only want to talk about, one policy, that's absolutely fine. You do not have to fill it all out by any means. We accept anything. We've had drawings before, we've had poems. They all get logged. Anything.
Thank you.
That's all right. Thanks.
Thank you. So that just confirms that whether it's question 1 or question 104 or everything in between. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Mr. Chairman, quick point of order. We did have a proposal on the seconder on the table, which I don't think we've cleared out yet. We seem to be going back into a general discussion, but we have got the proposal from Councillor Speed that's been seconded.
And that was what I put my hand up to speak on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
So, could I just clear that one out, because I thought we'd clear that one out and that was going to be taken away and dealt with. Right. Okay, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I thought to myself, God, we could give you loads more work before we actually send this lot out. Let's delay it for another month, 6 months, another couple of years. Oh yeah, great. Oh, let's wait till Swellborough Council doesn't exist. Then we won't have to worry. We could make it perfect by having another 300 staff working on it. We'd be bankrupt, of course. But this all went to the PTPWG, which has been working on this subject for some considerable time, as have had our officers. And I just think, members have had lots of opportunities to say, oh yeah, don't forget we need to put this in, and don't forget you can't keep coming up at the last minute saying, oh yeah, and we need a bit of work done on this and we need a bit of work done on that. Do you not think, that they're working their socks off already?
Yes, in answer to all of those sections, Councillor Harrison, I do. But they are wearing socks, I can guarantee that for you, even though they're working them off. So, Councillor Speed, just for the record then, could you put your proposal forward so that we can record it?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify a point Councillor Harrison made, that this is not intended to delay the Reg 18. In fact, we've already said it would go into the Reg 19. There's nothing about delaying the Reg 18 in this. So the proposal was that officers are asked to prepare whether it's a landscape report or whatever report is required to assess whether we should have a policy whereby solar farms should not be permitted to be built on BMV, and that report would be referred back to PTPWG for consideration.
And I'm happy on maintaining my seconding on that.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. So, all those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? So that's carried. Thank you. We're back to the substantive bit, and it's Councillor Baldock.
I was going to push my luck and move the recommendations.
Fantastic. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Gibson, I think it's your... Thank you. It's his committee, with all due respect. So, no, I know you're not. Okay, so seconded by Councillor Gibson. Those in favour? That's unanimous, members. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that concludes this evening's business. Thank you all very much. Safe journey back home. And thanks for the debate.
Just reminded members that